Hi, this is Terry Sipple from Vital Images, and the next profile that we're going to discuss is the Introduction to Results Distribution. So results distribution in radiology. A result is the radiology report, and distribution means to distribute or to send. So the purpose of this profile is to send a radiology report. The co-authors for this profile are Steve Langer from Mayo Clinic and Tessa Cook from the University of Pennsylvania. So the value proposition, or why are we doing this profile? The imaging result of the radiology report is the product, or it's what the radiologist produces that provides value to the ordering physician. And so obviously this is something of a lot of importance to the radiologists. Today, most radiology reports are free format text. As free format text, they are not easily computer processable, or a computer cannot act upon the free format text. They can, but it's not simple to do. We would like to move forward to be more structured or coded radiology reports, and this is a first step. So the intent of this profile is not to structure the entire radiology report, but to bring forth certain pieces of information so that we can automate processes downstream and trigger processes downstream using information in the radiology report. Some of the benefits of semi-structured or coded reporting include things like being able to perform the follow-up of non-critical actionable findings. So that's a Category 3 in the American College of Radiology, which means that it's often called an incidental finding. As a matter of fact, it is because of a profile that is being written in follow-up of non-critical actionable findings that this particular profile in results distribution actually came to be. Additional information that's available in the structured, semi-structured coded report is billing, the ability to automate or at least to question whether or not a consult is needed, submission to different types of registries, clinical decision support feedback, potentially identifying studies for clinical trials, and then including information in the IHE Standardized Operation Log of Events, or SOL profile, which is another webinar that you might want to take a peek at. Also at this point, I'm just going to put a plug in. If you have not read Kurt Langlatz's book, it's called The Radiology Report. It's available on Amazon, and it goes through all the benefits of structured reporting, and it does a great job, and it's a quick read. So results distribution. We had to make some decisions on what to do with this profile. So looking at results distribution, there's a lot of different ways that we could go. We could look at many different standards which are available for structured reports or for reports in general. But we decided to specifically focus on the installed base, and we decided to focus on creating as much adoption as possible for this profile. So what that meant, when you combine those two requirements of installed base and adoption, is we took a look at FHIR, the new HL7 FHIR protocols. We took a look at DICOM Part 20, which is imaging reports in CDA, which as the co-author of that DICOM part, this one hurt a little bit, but we also took a look at structured data capture in both IHE and FHIR. We took a look at DICOM SR, and in the end we decided that the best fit standard for this profile was HL7, specifically version 2.5.1. So it's an HL7 ORU message. We took the HL7 ORU message and began to focus on identifying some structured and coded data to begin to change how ORU messages are typically sent today, with the intent of this being a gap solution, not a final solution. So this profile is written in an attempt to move towards structured reporting as opposed to being an end solution, and it is not intended to compete with CDA or structured data capture. The profile is relatively simple. There are three actors. There's a report creator, there's a report manager, and there's a report consumer. And there's one transaction, which is send imaging results or send a radiology report. The report creator can be a variety of different types of systems. It can be voice dictation, it can be point-and-click reporting, it can be NLP, it can be template-driven or not template-driven. Radiology, cardiology, doesn't matter. The report manager, examples of report manager are PAC system, a reporting system, an EMR, And then finally, the assumption is that the report consumer is probably going to be grouped with another actor in a different profile. For example, a report consumer can simply display reports. It can be part of an EMR or a research database, or we're hoping that in the not-too-distant future, it will be matched up with follow-up actionable finding manager. So a kind of a system that's going to take a look at the reports and see if there's any incidental findings and deal with those in a computerized manner. There are two primary use cases in results distribution. The first, they're both fairly simple. The first is to send an imaging result to an EMR. The second is to send an imaging result to a follow-up source. I'd like to emphasize one particular section in this document, in the new profile. In every IHE profile, there's a section, it's section 4, called the concept section. This particular profile makes extensive use of the concept section. It's in the introduction, and I've been told that the introduction is often skipped because it's an introduction and people go straight to the pictures. I'm going to request that you take a look at the concept section because there's a lot of good information in there. There's information in there about DICOM Part 20 and CDA. There's results versus reports, specifically the role of DICOM SR and how to incorporate measurements. There's clinical reporting guideline information from the ACR and the ESR. There's how report templates and classification systems fit into this profile. There's discussions on actionable findings, voice dictation, coded results, and finally, the different formats for the imaging results payload. So I'd encourage you to go read that particular section in detail, please. Now, if you're familiar with HL7, you're going to recognize this as an HL7 or standard HL7 ORU message. You'll recognize these segments. It has an MSH segment, the event segment, the patient identification, visit, role, order common, order detail, timing, and then finally the various OBX segments. This is all very standard, and this is probably what your systems are already doing today for the most part. We did promote a couple of additional attributes, but not a lot. What I'd really like to bring your attention to is down here, this little note. The OBX segment may repeat, which is always true in HL7, but we specifically defined LOINC codes, well, actually we specifically use LOINC codes to define OBX segments for this particular profile, especially as they relate to the follow-up of non-critical communication and incidental findings. This list is a list of the 6 OBX segments which are defined. You can see one is a study instance UID, another is a finding, radiology recommendation, for example, radiologist recommends a CT abdomen in 6 months. The radiologist requests consultation, so this is the radiologist saying, I'd like to talk to you. Here's my report, but I'd still like to talk to you. Number 5 is the radiologist requests feedback, which is the radiologist saying, I'd like to know whether or not you ordered this study. If you didn't, why? And then number 6 is the imaging result payload, which is here's the report. Most of these are not required. As a matter of fact, the only one which is required is the imaging result payload. However, most of these are highly recommended if they exist. There are 2 of these OBX segments, which we code as actionable findings and with priority flags, which we'll go to into more detail in just a second. Those are the finding itself and then the entire report. So as a quick review, before we jump into other things, the ACR and ESR define actionable finding categories as normal, non-actionable, which means that it's not quite normal, but there's no action to be taken. A category 3, which is often called an incidental finding, which means follow-up required within days. Category 2, which is urgent or meaning required within hours. And then category 1, which is emergent, which means attention required within minutes. What we've done is we've taken all those action finding codes and the priorities, and we've mapped them to the different OBX segments and OBR segments. So I don't intend to go through this table in detail right now so much as to bring your attention to this table, which is in the transaction itself. And you can see how we've gone through and we've mapped all of these different codes and different levels to specific places in the OBX segment or in the OBR segment. We have defined separate RADLEX codes to make sure that each ACR and ESR category is defined separately. So as I mentioned earlier, this profile is available for public comment until July 21st. We would sincerely appreciate any additional feedback that we can get prior to that time. And then the follow-up of non-critical actionable findings profile is still in development. And if you would like to be involved in those, that would be great as well. The timelines are on the Wiki IHE webpage. And finally, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of us.